Republicans have to find a way to get Democrats fired. Is the electorate so ticked off that they're going to churn Congress like butter this fall? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angles brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com who fund this enterprise out of the generosity of their own hearts. And all they ask from you is that you would click that like button, the thumbs up, share this, hit the notification button, do something that makes you feel like you're just not a lazy bum. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Gentlemen, the Politico.com has a story that voters are really kind of annoyed in several different ways. Inflation, which we read today, just hit an all-time, or not all-time, but a 40-year high of 8.5%. Fuel prices are up. Obviously, housing prices are up. Goods are scarce. There's a war in Ukraine. And President Biden has suggested a couple of months ago that inflation was going to be a temporary thing and that we just need to suck it up and get through it. Well, turns out that doesn't look like it's true. So all of this leads Politico, Steve, to conclude, along with Moody's, which did the research on this, that it's going to be a tough path for Democrats to hold Congress this fall. And I've got two questions really for both of you. Number one, what do you think of the assessment of Politico with regard to the prospects for Democrats this fall? And number two, what would you recommend that their opponents would do to capitalize on these challenges they face?
Let me answer your second question first, because I just happened to come across this when we were between segments here. Let me see if I can find this real quick. There we go. Well, no, I can't find the headline, but the upshot of it is that the Republican National Committee and whatever the House Money Raising Committee is, are so flush with cash. People are giving so much to the various GOP organizations that they have decided to spend this money going in hard on D districts, not just the ones that would normally switch in a fairly big Republican year, but the ones that probably wouldn't switch unless the Republicans made a big effort. And this is kind of huge. And I'll tell you why. When the Democrats got that big majority in 2008 and 2010, they did something. I can't remember who came up with this. It wasn't Carville. It was that other weasel, which was, we're just going to go everywhere and we're going to go in big, every single district. We're going to put up a candidate. We're going to spend money because they were flush because President Bush was so discredited, and it worked. They got these huge majorities, and then they were able to pass whatever legislation they wanted once Obama was president. I'm sorry, I said 8 and 10. It was 2006 and 2008. They were able to pass whatever they wanted for 2 years, and they treated all of these freshman congressmen like lemmings, like the sacrificial pawns. They didn't care if these guys got kicked out of office in the next cycle in 2010 because they would have gotten done what Obama wanted them to do. And I would like to see the Republicans go in with that kind of attitude because we've needed some payback for a while. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, we need to undo all this legislative damage that we've been witnessing since 2009 and actually even before that. So I would hope that the Republicans have decided to play as aggressively as the Democrats did. And when it comes to winning these sort of marginal elections, at least that much, it looks like they're really trying that. What actually happens legislatively in 2023 and beyond, well, we'll see. Let's keep a fire lit under them, if you know what I mean. That said, the conventional wisdom right now is that the Republicans will take the House majority back. Nothing huge, no huge gains, 15 seats, maybe 20 seats because of various gerrymandering and all of these safe districts and whatnot. I don't think so. I think the upside right now is 40 seats. It might even be higher than that. We could be looking at 1994 all over again. It won't be that big in the Senate. In fact, the question is, can the GOP take the Senate? But after reading how aggressive the National Party is finally getting, I've got a lot more hope than I had just a couple of days ago about the GOP securing the Senate, too. What I'm really looking forward to is, the lamentations of their women.
They will be driven before us. Bill Whittle, it has been suggested that the only thing more difficult for a Republican to defeat than a beleaguered Democrat who faces a stiff electoral headwind is no candidate at all, that the Republicans running unopposed would have a harder time. They do have a convenient whipping boy this time around, so to speak. Bill, do you think that the Politico assessment that this is going to be a tough road for Democrats is accurate? And what would you suggest? You suggest like going back to kind of a Newt Gingrich days of a unified approach among Republican candidates to saying, we have an agenda, here's what we plan to do?
Well, yes, and I'll get to that in a second. But as far as the Politico understatement goes, these are the kind of people that would issue a statement like, well, we've given a fire bucket to Captain Smith, but it's going to be quite a challenge for him to bail the Titanic out and keep her afloat all the way to New York. That's the level of understatement that this is. It's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be a bloodbath because everywhere across the pop culture it shows it's going to be a bloodbath. And just this week, I put out a new firewall that deals with the wisdom of crowds, and one of the examples I talk about how a large, diverse group of people consistently come up with a much more accurate prediction or guess of things if you average all of their votes together. One of the examples I used in that video was election betting pools, and how election betting pools are consistently much more accurate than the best polls produced by the best experts. It's just a thing. It's a mathematical thing. So I was just a second ago checking on election betting odds. As of the time that we record this, did a quick screen grab for you. The chance of Republican, this is where people are putting their money, okay? This is where individual Americans all across the country are putting their money. Republican control of the House back in March of 2021, the closest it got was that back in March, they said there was a 57% chance the Republicans would take the House in March of last year. Currently, the chance of Republicans taking the House is 84.7%. That's what the odds are for the House.
Wow.
On the Senate, the closest that got, well, back in June of last year, 51% of the people thought that the Democrats would take control of the Senate. Now, the current odds are that the Republicans will take control of the Senate. 75% chance that that's going to happen. Those are the betting odds.
Wow.
Now, the reason that these things are important is because we're talking about people who are putting their money on the line. They're not partisans. They're not lying about their political affiliation. They're not telling a pollster what they think they want to hear. These are people who are wagering their own money on what they think is going to happen. And the 87%, I think it was 75% for the Senate. Yeah, that's a sign of a landslide of historic proportions. And I might point out that in both cases, for the last last 6 months, not only is the gap large, but the gap increases every day. It's getting larger and larger and larger and larger. More and more people are saying Republicans are going to do this. So yes, now that's assuming that the Democrats ran unopposed. But fortunately for the Democrats, Republicans will be in this mix here, and so there's plenty of time to still screw this up. I'd love to say I was being flip about this, but honestly, I've never seen anybody with the circular firing squad as effective as the Republican Party. However, the last couple of years, especially of far left politics, have put so many regular people away from the Democratic Party on fundamental issues. We're not even talking about taxation. Now we're talking about it's going to cost me $100 to fill my car full of gas, or my kids are going to school and they're being taught about gay sexual practices when they're 4 years old, or inflation is 10% higher or 8 or 9% higher than it was last month. These things are not things that you can spin away. These are core fundamental issues, and I think they're going to take just a shellacking. Certainly, I think it's going to be the biggest election landslide that I've ever lived to see. And I don't want to jinx anything and don't get cocky and all the rest of it. But I think it might be the biggest election landslide change in history, in American history.
Hey, Scott, can I throw something in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Bill, you said something that just really clicked. Talk about this accelerating preference cascade on the betting sites for the GOP. Guess what else? Inflation is still accelerating. And I say that these two things are just like that.
It'll be worse in November than it is now. And we can expect that all of these things will continue to widen that gap.
Well, I don't have any success at predicting future events in any field, frankly, for that matter, particularly in politics, and many things can happen between now and November. But I do remember something that somebody once told me when I was running for office, and it really struck me. If you've ever interviewed for a job, it's tough. It's nerve-wracking. You got to go in and sit in front of a stranger and answer questions you don't know are coming, and try to acquit yourself well and hope that it's good enough for you to get that job. Well, what if you went to a job interview and after the 15 or 20 minute grilling that they subjected you to, they said, okay, well, we really appreciate you coming in. By the way, just so you know, the position that you're applying for is currently filled. And we have to decide whether to fire that guy and hire you to replace him. So it's not just that there are two people competing for a job, but one guy's already in the job. And so that's kind of how voters look at it. And the advice I got when I was running for office, they said, look, you can say all the right things. You can have all the right values. You can have all the right views and policy positions. You can be a sweet, lovable guy with a beautiful smile. You got to get that other guy fired. And that's actually kind of a painful thing. If you're a decent person running for office, the kind of person who's gone through life with the understanding that you go out of your way to not say negative things about other people, even if you have negative views of other people, because it's not polite. It is not fruitful in most cases. But Republicans have to find a way to get Democrats fired. And that takes a combination of a positive vision of the future, but also frank discussion about what has actually happened so far. And what I found was most successful in the race that I managed to win, the biggest race that I managed to win, was repeating over and over again the same thing about my opponent that was fact. That was actually something that he did. And he became so furious about this that he kind of lost his marbles over it and began to get frantic. And all I said over and over again was that he was responsible for the 16% tax hike. That was all of my advertising. And he actually took me aside at one point and said, you got to stop saying that. And I said, why would I stop saying that? And he said, well, because it's not true. And I outlined the case for him again. And I said, no, actually, it is true. And I'm just saying something true. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying that, Jesus doesn't love you. I'm just saying that you were single-handedly responsible for the 16% tax hike. Republicans have to find some crystal clear thing that they can say, that they can lay at the doorstep of Democrats, that either they did in a positive way, meaning that they passed or they took action to do, or that they failed to do in a negative way when they had adequate opportunity to do so. And then they need to beat that into the ground over and over and over again. And they need to mean it. They cannot be insincere about this. They need to care about it. It bothered me when I ran for office that this guy, and I'm talking about a primary race in this case, but it bothered me that somebody from my party was actually responsible for that tax increase, because I saw that as ruining the brand of my party. Republicans have to value the brand of their party enough to speak the truth and to say it with vigor, not engage in nasty, negative stuff or insult people's looks or cast aspersions on people that aren't true, but to anchor it in fact and keep driving it home. Do not complicate the campaign with 97 different issues. Don't throw the kitchen sink at them. Let the talk show hosts do all that. You get on that one string and you play that string over and over and over again so that it is humming in the voters' minds when they step into that voting booth and make their decision. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.